Okay. Om Om Ganganapate Namaha, Gungarabhyo Namaha, Om Aim Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Ganana Antva Ganapatikam Hava Mahe Kavim Kavinam Ufamashravastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashranvanothibisi Sadanam. Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Gangurubhyo Namaha. Om Aim Saraswatyai Namaha. Good evening, everyone. It's a great joy to be with all of you, and I want to thank also Shankari Tre for organizing this talk. We do this through her center called Come Together Yoga in Long Island, along Rockville Center. And so we try to do satsangs instead of every week, which is a little maybe too much for some of us, at least for the speaker. We're doing it every 2 weeks. I hope you don't mind. So for tonight, I thought we'll talk a little bit about the spiritual path in itself, just a few points here and there about this journey to ourselves. Um, for many of you, you know what Vedanta is, the teachings of Vedanta. Veda means the knowledge, Anta means the end. So the ending portion of this knowledge of the supreme reality, which are found in the Upanishads, which is also called Vedanta, is actually part of the Veda. The end of knowledge may mean many things, and it can mean the end of knowledge as self-knowledge. It can mean the concluding parts of the Upanishads, of the Veda called Upanishads. It can also mean the essence of the Veda, which is I am or I am that. So for myself, I love Vedanta. I don't say that I'm kind of a person that necessarily likes to debate Vedanta for a long time, but I have found the greatest comfort in the teachings of Vedanta, especially the way that Swami Shivananda gives it. There's a lot of comfort in it for myself, having been just like each one of you and still being the person that tends to identify with the temporary and not really grasping or recognizing what the real is. I have found that even when the greatest difficulties have challenged me in life, if I went to Vedanta, the basic teachings of who am I, and I will find an enormous comfort. I remember even in the verse 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna begins the teaching. He begins to give the teachings to Arjuna with the verse, Natve vaham jatunasam natve neme janadipaha nacheva nabhavishyamaha sarve vayamataf param. So he says something very beautiful. In all this dilemma and the problems and uh, being torn in life, which is what Arjuna was experiencing and which is what we experience from time to time, to all of that conflict, one verse was given straight away, which is, "Hey Arjuna, you are eternal. You never cease to exist. You existing now, and you will exist in the future. So am I, as the Lord. I never, I always existed. I'm existing now, and I will never cease to exist." And so all these kings that are here on this battlefield, ready to lay down their lives, they are the same like me and you, that they're eternal. So the forms and names, of course, are not eternal. That we cannot do anything about. All we can do, take some supplements and eat good food and exercise, and try to live as long as you can. But the point is that before even you make that effort, it is important to remind yourself of who we really are and what kind of a spiritual life, what kind of a journey is this. So there is a little story here when 10 men were trying to cross the river by swimming. And so after they crossed the river, they wanted to make sure that everyone has crossed it. So now each person was counting, how many people crossed the river. And each person counted only 9. And so, you know, The person who was counting said, "Oh my God, maybe I'm confused. I'm not seeing somebody here. Can you please do it?" He asked the other person. So like this, the story goes on that each person counts, and each time they count only 9 people, until a person, some stranger comes and he sees them all, being confused. And of course, because they in their discovery found out that the 10th person drowned, they were crying. And so this stranger who came by said, "Please don't cry, people. You made a mistake, and that is that you didn't count yourself." It's a simple story, right? How many times do you not count yourself? You count everything else. We count money, we count experiences, we count this and that, how many things we did, many things we didn't do. So we're content, we're discontent, we're searching all the time. The reason why we are the way we are is because we stopped focusing and understanding that it is us who gives truly, uh, who gives the light to all of this creation. Of course, it sounds like theory right now, but eventually it'll become the reality, provided that you sustain this way of thought throughout the day. Of course, we need to still meditate, we need to do other sadhanas in order to keep the mind in a very high kind of a vibratory level. And then eventually this realization will come, at which point you will not need any sadhanas. Even sadhanas now appear to be something that we need to do, and let's keep them for a while. So looking at the spiritual path from the point of view of Vedanta is basically that there isn't such a thing as a spiritual path. Ooh, this is too much. What is this? I do my pranayama every day. I keep a spiritual diary, in fact, of all of these things. But the reality is that the spiritual path is only is kind of a path that seems to appear somewhere in our illusion, because in our illusion we feel that we're in bondage. So in our illusion we feel that we need to be free. So that's how in our illusion we also have the spirituality. Now this is from a highest point of view, so I'm not recommending that we drop these practices that we have. Why is the spiritual path so different from other paths? If you want to go to Florida, you know what to do. If you want to go nowadays, they're going to Mars. I don't know exactly what what they really want to do up there. Probably to create some more problems. Why is it so that each path seems to take you from point A to point B to point C, or wherever else you want to go? But only this path is very strange, because eventually you follow it, and all you fall upon and you discover is your own self. This is highly strange, right? It's like the path appears to be outward, and the destination seems to be external, such as I'm looking for God, I'm searching for something, right? But it is really the journey that starts with oneself and ends with oneself. That makes it even more so difficult and challenging, because on one hand you have a work to do, or another hand there isn't work to do. Is there any time when I ceases to exist, right? Is there any time when any one of you ceases to exist? So then of course we have a problem, and we will see this as we go through this particular subject. So the spiritual path is the process of rediscovering of who we are. It is the process of rediscovering who we have always been. And it's like that who you are never deviates from its dharma, from its true nature. That's who you really are, does not morph itself into anything, doesn't modify itself into anything. And yet, because of this whole process of identification that we go through in even a single day, we believe that we have morphed into an anger, anxiety, jealousy, sadness, and sometimes happiness, right? I wouldn't overdo that one, because it would be wonderful to feel like that we may identify with some more positive thoughts, but the reality, that's not the case. So to know oneself, to discover oneself, is to really discover what it means to be alive, to be really truly alive. To know oneself is to actually be free, and to be truly free, and to truly exist, and to truly know that you truly know what love is, right? You will know what love is in its fullness, not in these little splintered pieces of glass that we seem to be stepping on and calling it, oh, this is love, that is love. Of course, we are not saying that there isn't such a thing as pure form of love, but until we really found out where the love comes from, and what a love within us finds that seemingly exists outside, we will always believe that we love something outside of ourselves. So there's only one place from which the love manifests, and there's only one place which love is always in, and that love as an experience is indivisible. It is not like, oh, I have here love for somebody else, that person has love for something else. It's not like that. So that's the little introduction. I think we need to remember that yoga and Vedanta and many traditions like this speak about our eternal and infinite nature. And it is our job to work to that, in the direction of that discovery. We did not come into existence. That's the first problem we have to kind of think of. And we don't really cease to exist at any time. The body, yes, we can say yes, but you're not the body, right? So the hardest nut to crack in this kind of philosophy is this identification that we have with the body, which of course also includes the mind. Now, our life has an appearance of everything but infinity, right? The traditions speak about infinity, but what is our experience? So we feel like that our life is actually limited. Wherever we look and whichever way we try to accomplish something, there are some limitations. So where are limitations? See, our limitations are when we say, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I am, I am an educated person, I'm a non-educated person, I'm a white or black, I'm from this country, I'm super smart, I'm a sannyasi, I am a householder, I am a doctor, a lawyer, I'm a plumber, whatever it is, right? So these labels that we use in order to, of course, you know, be able to communicate with other people, we use these sadly as labels and we think this is who we are. Now, in theory, this sounds easy. All you have to do is to not think like this. But there's a lot of things that we need to think about here. One is, how are you going to think yourself outside of these definitions and these labels? Can you walk through a single day and say, okay, I didn't think that I was a man, I was a woman, I'm a human being, I'm like this and I'm like that. And if you live in Manhattan, like here I do, like, what is it? Everything outside reminds you that you of your limitations. There's always something outside to help you kind of either forget your limitations or to fulfill some of your desires, that at least temporarily you can feel unlimited in some ways. So the labels is not who we are. Now this is I know that you know the teachings. The question is, are we able to put this into practice, right? So as we identify with things, what happens is that we limit ourselves. We become limited by our own projections, by our own identifications, by our own ideas of how things are. how people are, who they should be, how this life is, what the politicians should be doing, what they should not be doing, right? So we're continuously involved in this process of objectification, which takes us away from our own self. So we are specifically limited by our own longings and our desires, believing that if we fulfill our longings and fulfill our desires, then I will be free. And this is what it happens. You know, you long for something, long for a piece of chocolate. I want to discuss any other experiences, you know, and then what happens is that you get the chocolate and temporarily you feel all of these things that I talked about. You feel temporarily free, you feel content, you feel blissful, you don't think how old you are, you certainly don't think where you're coming from, whether you're black, white, Asian, whether you're um, man or woman or whatever it is. Those projections keep this mind in a continuous state of agitation, is to try to define yourself in a certain way in a society, and the society unfortunately feeds this wrong identifications that we have. It kind of it continuously inspires you to think, oh, I'm a man, I'm a woman. You got the real, you know, you get all kinds of things there. You have, you know, fashion, you have this and that. It keeps everybody in a state of perpetual kind of restlessness. There's entertainments, there are programs, there's technology, there's everything. So we feel that we're in bondage. But that is only partially true, thank God, because we also know that we are free. But we don't know yet how and when. It's like what Swami Shivananda would say, it's like a person who is halfway, like, you know, in the water, let's say in the ocean standing or in the river, and halfway, so half of his body is wet in the water and half of his body is outside of the water. This is our feeling. So even though we're sometimes trammeled by our own limitations and everything, we will never cease to fight to free ourselves up. You know, we will never actually admit it that we're in bondage, because it's not healthy to think that you're in bondage. How are you going to make any effort then? All the philosophy will fall down to pieces if it wasn't encouraging, in fact, the idea that you're free. Even to think positively, to try to change the way you think, to change your habits and everything. It only indicates that you're always free. It's just that because of some past conditioning, past longing, past desires, past mistakes, past errors, you feel like, oof, it's tight. I can't quite step out of where I am now. You know, so you can make your efforts, of course, to move in a certain direction. But the most important thing is to every day think, I'm free. I'm free, and I always have been free. And only when I start this process of identification, or you may also call it in proper Vedanta language, a process of objectification, because if I start to identify with my body and everything, I start to think of myself as an object or as a person. So what happens is that we are, as long as we identify like this, we are frustrated by the limitations. Of course, we sometimes think these limitations are imposed on us from the outside, or we could say that I'm limited by these limitations, which are simply the creations of my own mind in the form of responses, thoughts, feelings, and everything else. So we have a word in Vedanta, which is called upadhi. Maybe you heard of this, Upadhi, upadhi. So what are the upadhis? The upadhis are those things that we identify with simply. And those things that we identify with full force of the unconscious, that is called Maya in Sanskrit. It is these programs, you know, that pervasively run in our lives. They set the limitations to what we feel, how we think. You know, they may be related to how we experience time, how we experience space. They're related to all these things: freedom, absence of freedom, existence, non-existence, love, etc. So these are called upadhis. They create this, they are like heavy curtains. They seem to veil who we are. So these are the things that in yoga we learn to transcend gradually. For example, a yogi is the person who learns some techniques. Let's say in hatha yoga, you learn, the asanas, the pranayamas, the different things like that. But why do you learn them? You see, many modern people, they learn asanas, they're flexible, they can do different things. They love to charm everybody else. I mean, it's beautiful to see when somebody's flexible, right? I agree with that. But it also encourages the idea that I'm the body. He's got to look beautiful. He's got to be tanned. He's got to be in Costa Rica. He's going to be somewhere else. So I know that these people are not Vedantists or anything, but at the same time, they projecting this idea that that is what yoga is about. Whereas the reality is you learn these techniques to not identify with your body, because you start to become like a witness and see that the energies and the things that are taking place in this body are not your own. Like, why would you own them? You did not even create this life that brought you onto this planet Earth. I mean, you did not will yourself to be born. You didn't do any of that. So the good news is that, the bad news, first of all, is the peculiar difficulty of all of this process is that we don't even know that we are obviously the cause of our limitations, but and bondage. But we should remember that we are also the cause of our liberation. This is another beautiful thought. So it's the same mind, and now is a big problem, right? It's ruining you every day. You start your day happy, and then by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, you're miserable because worry is here, bills come there, you have to do this, the pressures of time, technology is racing everybody to death. Don't think that technology is going to free up anybody. I always tell people there are many civilizations prior to us that had technology better and higher than ours. They were all destroyed by it. So the best technology is nature, as far as I know. If you need to send many emails, learn how to control your mind. You can send thousands of messages instantly to many people. That will come. Multitasking in a good way. So anyway, diversion a little bit. The good news is that the same mind, which is the problem there, becomes also the cause of one's own liberation. That is what we are encouraging. So you can think of a mind lower and higher. You all know the words tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. So sattvika mind is your higher mind. Lower mind is your evolutionary mind that is being driven by, desire to specifically survive in a physical, as a physical organism, to continue to fulfill its own desires and things like that. Okay, so that's so and so. Now we need to remember that the all power is within us. Okay, it's just the power to discover that this path is has begun. There's not really a beginning in this path, but anyway, I always say it began with yourself and it will end with yourself. If that's the case, you're moving from the point A to point A. Where did you really go? How much effort was this needed to go from a point A to point A? But that will come to a little later. All the power, I beg you and beg myself every day, you have to remember, is within us. You have to believe this. To make this realization come true, you have to believe that this is the case. You can do and undo things, as Swami Shivananda says. Nothing can stop you. It may take time to do what you need to do and to undo the things that you want to remove, but nothing can stop you. So we need to believe in this in order to recover on knowledge, right? Which, like a distant memory, lays buried within our soul. This memory of who you are is not a memory that we normally talk about, you know, such as memories of, 10 years ago or anything like this. This memory is an imprint of immortality and eternity in yourself. And nothing will ever remove that. Even if for the next 100 lifetimes you decide to be completely buried in some silly activities and you say, I don't want to realize yourself, I'm going to go and dance and get drunk and do all kinds of weird things. I don't want self-realization. I'm sick of this teachings that doesn't tell me anything what to do. Like, you can say things like this. And for the next 100 lifetimes, you say, okay, I'm just going to enjoy myself. It's kind of very difficult to accomplish anyway. But what will happen after 100 lifetimes? You will still come back to the point A, because the consciousness is one. The consciousness really is who you are. It does not move. It doesn't proceed from here to there. It doesn't go from one life to another. So knowing that, this consciousness simply witnesses all these, phenomena going on in the form of individuals, people, lives, and God knows what, even creation like that. So do remember this power within you and meditate every day on it. So even though I'm mixing a little bit of Vedanta with a little sort of positive thinking, I would just say, please never believe that you're weak, and especially that you're ignorant. The power is there. All it needs to happen is that you need to tap into it. You're going to tap into it still by using the methodology of your whatever the practices you're doing, specifically meditation. Now, everybody wants to be happy. I don't know if you may think, oh, I'm okay as I am. I don't want to be any more happy than I am. I just need to kind of get rid of some of these things. Everybody wants eternal happiness. Nobody wants to be happy for a day or two or anything like this. Swami Shivananda calls this, and it's a Vedantic term, Nitya Sukham. It's eternal happiness, right? So we try to attain all these things in life, and unfortunately, we're not able to do it. See, we all know that we are. That you don't need the proof that you exist, but we do not know what we are. Because we don't know what we are, we do not also understand what our life is about. So, this universe in reality, this life in the world, as you see it, as I see it, and as all beings experience it, is simply a case or a process of hypnotization. That's all there is. Ignorance is nothing but hypnotization. So, what should we do? We should dehypnotize ourselves, and that will immediately prevent any suffering from arising. To think, I'm not a woman or a man. Okay, ordinarily outside you can be a woman and a man. It doesn't matter. When you come to the office, you're not going to look like some strange being, but you're going to think for yourself, this is not who I am. This is the process of hypnotization that I've been keeping on for many, many lifetimes, and the time has come that I'm going to snap out of it. This is the time, and this is what we're going to do. So now we come to this idea. So, okay, if the path is from myself, and the ending or destination is also myself, then what's happening? Then why is this that we need so many things in life to be happy? Just thinking, even from the point of view of happiness, security, love, and other things. What, God only knows what we will do and what people do in the name of it. You know, so we're obviously living in a very restless world. You have to remember, we're trying to find peace, happiness, one way or another. And in spite of making all this elaborate arrangement for comfort, for security, for finding love, for finding this and that, physical, psychological, we find ourselves again restless and also insecure. For example, we believe that the more we have something, the better we will feel. Let's say if we have more money, we will feel more secure. You tell me if you know a person who had more money has become more secure. You have to know the person inside. We're not talking about external things. So the more of something doesn't mean freedom from that what you want more. Okay. So as we acquire more and more power, more and more of any kind of anything, we also become more and more unhappy or more and more insecure. See, today, a human life specifically is measured in the terms of money, in terms of economic value, rather than the quality of their being, or even such as things such as kindness and love and all these things. They be valued very much in a spiritual life. So everyone is looking for the basic three things. What is this? Everybody is looking to live for as long as they can. That's true. Everyone is looking to live to know as much as possible, and everyone is looking to be loved and to love for as much as possible. So we're really looking for absolute measures of these things. We're not looking for relative measures, and yet in this world you cannot find the absolute values of this. You can only find the relative values of it, and that is highly frustrating. I would like to be 100% happy, but then I end up being only 10% happy or 15% happy. I want to know everything, but I realize that my knowledge, since it's kind of moving in a linear way, very much depends on my memory, on my capacity of grasping, on my intelligence, of my accessibility, or the books that I have, teachers that I have. So I want to enlarge this thing, but I'm never quite happy. Even if I've studied for 10, 15, 20 years, something, I want to know more, right? So there's always, you know, it's like a little bit like when you watch this news, modern news, right? You go on internet and you want to find some event that has been described from A to Z. You can't find it. They start some story about Donald Trump here and this person there, and then tomorrow come for some more. And then you come for some more. Then they deviate from that. Something else comes. You cannot find any absolute truth or any absolute news, if I may say, in any of this. See, we know that the money doesn't bring happiness, because if that was the case, many rich people would be far away, far away. They would be very happy. Similarly, poverty doesn't bring any happiness, because we know what poverty does. If the poverty, meaning having less, in this case, was the key to happiness, then imagine all these people in Bombay or Calcutta, they live in slums, how happy would that be? It's not so. So to quantify the experience, which is what we're trying to do, is not a way to finding its absolute value or degree. The only way you can find these three, happiness, existence, and knowledge, is within oneself. That is the fountain of everything. This is what the sages tells us. This is what the Upanishads tells us, everything. Yeah. So we're searching for something truly permanent. We actually, even psychologically, every day we're searching for some refuge, for psychological refuge. We want to be secure, not just for one moment or 1 hour. We want to feel secure all our lives. So we're holding on to things that are fleeting in trying to accomplish something that is permanent. This is our situation. But somehow, in our mind, there's this settled notion that only the outward things, the journey outside, the other people, the experiences, the situations can make us happy, or they do mar our happiness, right? So everything is externalized, everything is objectified. So this is what brings a lot of confusion and a lot of unhappiness, is to think this way. So what happens then if there are things, situations that contribute to our feeling secure and happiness? We like them. But in our liking, what we don't see is, I don't see love, okay? It is that we become attached to them, right? That we become dependent on them. So, our happiness or everything seems to be in hands of somebody else, or some situation at least, rather than our own. And guess what? This road of finding such an absolute happiness in a relative world is really the road with no end, right? It's an endless road. It only brings a complete frustration in life. So you begin your life quite happy little baby, nothing, until somebody gives you an idea that you need a toy to be happy. So they wingle something, bing, 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 and then you say, ah, that's what it means to be happy, right? It starts like this. Then later on, we get some bigger toys and different kinds of toys, and as we may say, real toys, but they're still toys, right? So our personal life begins like this as a seeker, right? And then what happens? We die as seekers. So when you die as a seeker, what happens when you get to astral levels, when you go over there, when you start to search, you're still looking for some happiness here and there. It happens so that the pictures of heavens are given to us, right? So the heavens are there. Of course, we know these are all, you know, there's a bigger story about that. But anyway, people are looking for happiness even in heavens. They want to stay there permanently. Since nothing is permanent, even when your credit or your savings run out and you're in heavens, you're going to be kicked out through the back door and say, sorry, that's it. It's like being in a deluxe hotel and you have every experience you can at the blink of your eye. And then, you run out of money. So what are you going to do? You can do some washing of dishes in heavens, but eventually they're going to get rid of you, and then you're going to fall down to this planet Earth, and you're going to hopefully listen to some spiritual teaching, you start all over again, which is okay. So this is what happens. The people try to, we seek, and so we will conclude that the very seeking, unfortunately, is a misery. You know, you can say, I will be more happy if I'm in Paris. Good. You go to Paris, and then what? After some time, the novelty wears out, and here you are, the same Prem Sadasivananda as it was in Manhattan, as it was in London, as it was in other places. Swami Shivananda says, go wherever you like. It is all the same. After the novelty wears out, whether it's a relationship, a person, a new apartment, or whatever it is in your job, it's all the same. After some time, you realize that you're still in a point A. Now, this time, you moved from point A to point A, you moved in your mind, and you realize, if we're talking this from a lower perspective, we have not moved anywhere. So we start to live our Groundhog Day, same problem everywhere. So what people call happiness is really nothing but an attachment, I would say, or dependence, or whatever they perceive to be external to themselves. If you want to be free from these notions, you have to cultivate the notion that you have everything within yourself to be happy, and you need not develop these dependence kind of relationships with things. This is ideally speaking like this. It will take some time to get to it. So then what happens? I'm seeking for this. Let's say I seek for good chocolate. You all know me. I mean, this was my little weakness here and there. Then I figured out chocolates, I've already had everything. Now I'm going to move to some cakes, tiramisu. So I go explore different tiramisus like this. So my seeking continues. I keep it very simple. So I'm seeking and moving from one object to another, one person to another. And every time I seek, I'm miserable. When I find what I think sought, okay, that is where I'm feeling happy. No, what happens is that I'm only happy in between two seekings. This is what it is. So the truth is this, and we should grasp this today very much. That yes, we're looking outside, we're looking for happiness, we're looking for all kinds of good things, money, power, relationships, possessions. But we we're seeking happiness. The question is this okay? You see, is this question, is it normal to seek? Then you have to say yes. This is interesting. So seeking happiness is the most legitimate aspect of your life. Why? Because you're seeking the 10th missing man or woman who crossed the river, and you found everything but yourself. So the seeking is the most legitimate thing. It is the most natural thing since you're seeking what? Yourself. See, we're seeking for happiness, but happiness happens to be our intrinsic nature. It is not something that comes to us from outside. Even when the chocolate finds its way into this mouth, the happiness that arises is not jumped from the chocolate into this mouth. It's been always there. So what did then chocolate do? It just triggered one important process, which is called the cessation of thoughts. You know this already from the studies that we did. The moment the mind comes to stand still, that's where you feel the fullness of who you are. And unless you're able to do this, you have to have the sadhanas, the different sadhanas from hatha yoga to everything. What do they do? They're slowing the mind down. They're reducing unnecessary thoughts. They're changing the quality of thoughts so that eventually, even when you change all the quality of thoughts into most positive thoughts, you have to give those up. It's much easier to give up a positive thought, meaning thought is a phenomena, than it is to give up a very heavy duty negative thought. We know that. So anyway, this is just a little bit. So this is the secret. Seeking is legitimate. Happiness happens to be our intrinsic nature. So when you're seeking, what you're doing, you're giving an expression to your intrinsic nature. You're giving an expression to your absolute nature, in fact, right? So the problem is that the method that we're using of seeking happiness is wrong, is directed outside. So what we are really seeking is the seeker himself or seeker herself. Can you believe it? And that seeker has a name in Christianity. It's called the kingdom of heaven. It's called the kingdom of heaven is within you. What does it mean? You know, many people studied the Bible and they have no clue what this brilliant incarnations of Lord said, right? So basically, in your life, make sure you don't forget counting yourself. Now, I don't mean the ego. Okay, that's leave that story to somewhere. But it is the self that is the missing factor in our life, and it is that self that is the source of everything. You know this analogy of a musk deer. That is a very dear deer to us. A musk deer is the deer that you find in Iran, India, these kind of areas across. This kind of a deer apparently moves thousands of miles in a single lifetime. And it happens to be a situation in which the musk deer is looking for the origin or the source of fragrance that actually comes from its own body. Can you believe that? This is like, musk, everybody knows that what the fragrance is. And this is what the deer is doing. He's going here and there. He says, okay, I'm going to go to Himalayas now. I'm going to go to Bombay. I'm going to find where this source and origin of this musk is. Well, we are a bunch of musk deer. Tonight, maybe over 20 musk deer. We're like sitting like deer-like, very dear to each other. And what we are doing is today we're going to listen to this talk, and tomorrow we're going to be busy looking for the mask someplace else, right? It may be a shop, a person, an experience, or anything like that. So there's a little sweet, silly story of a man who thought that he was a cat. So once upon a time, all the relatives of this man were advising we have to go to a psychiatrist to get rid of this. This is terrible. Like he thinks he's a cat. He's jumping from one piece of furniture to another. He's meowing. He's hiding when other people come. When a plumber comes, he comes and runs and hides under the bed. I mean, it's not very nice. After all, he's an adult. So he after some persuasion, he goes to the psychiatrist and says, okay, this is my problem. I think I'm a cat. So the psychiatrist put him on a chair and says, okay, listen, a couple of hours we'll talk. It will cost you $250 and you'll be okay. You will never be the cat again. So he says, okay, so he's, it comes simply by recognizing this is the arm, this is like, this only humans have the arms, have this kind of a face like this. After about 2, 3 hours, the man was completely convinced that he was not a cat. He was so happy. So he walked out, and all of a sudden, he saw a dog outside, and he ran back up to this guy and he said, oh my God, I know I'm not a cat, but how do the dogs know that I'm not a cat? So even though the guy, of course, tried to heal this problem, he still was not quite convinced. I think we're a little bit like that. We pretend to be weaklings, right? We don't pretend. We actually believe that this is who we are. There's a big life outside, and everything can, strike us at any given moment, and everything is serious and blah, blah, blah. And then somebody comes, a guru comes and it says, hey, listen, you are actually free. We won't believe it. We still would think, oh, well, somebody definitely know that we're not divine. So basically, this is what we need to remember. In fact, bondage as well as liberation of the self are both illusory. This is what the ultimate Vedanta says. This is not something you can put into practice today. No, you're still worried. You will be still worried about what the dogs are going to say. So I will be worried about what the dogs are going to say. So I am saying this only as a little kind of a distant star to look at, for your direction, like the northern star. You want to be able to say, that is the direction I'm moving in, and have this in view when you go through any experience. This is the idea. The limitation of who you are is an illusion. Just in the same way as it's considering that you're American or you're from here today is an illusion. So it's also, this is an illusion. Every day you should think, oh no, this is not who I am. I should not be defined by these things that I use in my life as instruments. I perform certain duties in life. That stays. It's okay. The body will move some way, the mind will do something like that. So this is what we are working on. Now, just to give an idea how we approximate everything, I will give you 2, 3 examples and then we'll stop. So here our intrinsic nature is that everything in us, meaning the existence, the knowledge, and the bliss or love, are infinite, meaning that there's nothing lesser than or bigger than that. It's simply infinite. It's immeasurable. It's absolute. So if that's the case, then what happens is that we all, for example, have this desire to exist as long as we can in this physical body. Where does it come from? That desire comes from the fact that you're already eternal, that you already exist forever. So you don't know this consciously, but that's what happens. This knowing that your existence seeps through your mind and appears to, in a form of actions that make sure that this body now, because of the projection, because of the adhyasa, superimposition we call it, we believe that this is what we're trying to make eternal here. Yeah, so we're trying to live as long as we can. Nobody's happy if they say, oh, I lived 70 years, I can now go. No, you don't say that. You want to live, you don't say a number. People say, I wish I could live up to 100, but it makes no sense. You really want to live forever. So maybe you have to move to California or someplace else like this to have some little methods given to you to live long life. But this is what we do. We try to extend this life. We're buying the best supplements, organic food, locally grown, cooking, everything, because we want this body to last forever. And this is a good thing. I'm not saying it isn't. The point which you need to remember is that you, in fact, want to somehow transfer that existence that is absolute in nature, that is the aspect of yourself, that is your intrinsic nature, onto this physical mortal body. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying you should know where this drive comes from. Like we unconsciously want to become immortal. How about desire to know? right? So the knowing. So of course, the nature of relative knowledge, as I said before, it is such that it's never fulfilling. We have all listened to talks for 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years, satsangs and everything. And never enough. It's never enough. Whatever you know is never going to be enough. You can live with some person and they can tell you every day about what they experience and they want to share the stories. And you will really never know them enough. You feel like I want to know some more, right? So the nature of relative knowledge is such that it always remains relative. It is relative to the capacity of the knowledge, and it is never complete and satisfying. We always want to know more. Think about your teacher training course that you did. You learned about chakras. Now you go to Amazon, you buy 20 books on chakras. You want to know more about that. You want to know, let's say I mentioned the word Vedanta. You say, oh, this sounds interesting. Okay, now the whole box is coming from the Amazon. It is true that you can have occasionally a complete fulfillment through the Amazon alone and nothing else. I believe that for sometimes it's like that. But, you know, what happens is with the relative keeps expanding, it keeps growing. As my teacher said, my teacher of Sanskrit, he said, what you know now is this much, and what you don't know is this much. I said, oh my God, like, put me through all this process. And it's like, it's not fun. So basically, what happens because of your tendency to lengthen your life infinitely, to know as much as you like, and to be loved or to feel love or to experience bliss all the time, your way of living, my way of living becomes addictive. See, that is the problem. So, irritable, isn't it? We know this. I'll give you some idea where you may recognize this as an instinct or for perhaps curiosity, right? Curiosity is also aspect of the self. When you're in a traffic, there's some accident, people stopped, everything. Doesn't everybody want to stop to see what's happening? Yes, because you're inquisitive, you want to know. A baby, when it's just a little baby, the way they experiment with the world and basically they're learning about the world is by putting everything into their mouth. you know they chew whatever they can, try to put in their mouth. That's how the baby learns. So also the dogs and the cats and the animals, they're chewing, always trying to figure out what things are like. And this is okay. So let's say your wife or your partner, your husband tells you, tonight, it's already 11 o'clock at night, and they tell you, okay, I have something important to talk to you about, but we will do this in the morning. You will not be able to sleep. It is like how this absolute sense of knowledge works through the relative mind. You will not be happy. Don't people actually say, I prefer, I preferred the truth, even if it hurts, than a lie, right? Because that's yourself. You can actually recognize the presence of the self in every emotion, feeling, and action in this human life, even though you may not be able to necessarily relate to everything, but everything is the self. There's nothing secondary to it. When you make a mistake, you're really upset with yourself, aren't you? You say, oh, God, how did I do this? Why? Because you expect yourself to be perfect in knowing how to do things right. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from yourself, from who you really are. Nobody wants to be rated as a fool. You call somebody an idiot or something like this is the biggest insult you can give them. Why? Because everybody in the depth of themselves knows, I know, I should know, like that. So then we have the joy of happiness and the desire for happiness, desire for bliss. This is a beautiful thing. Every night you go into dreamless state, right? And you're so happy. And then somebody wakes you up in the morning and say, I don't want to face the world anymore. I'm quite happy here where I am. See, that dreamless state, thoughtless state is where you really experience full happiness. However, you're not aware of it. But nevertheless, you will do anything to to go into deep sleep every night. You make this quite an elaborate ritual to lay down in bed and forget everything, right? You put a nice bed, sheets are super duper. The bed is made like double, triple, whatever. We live in America, so we can have a quadruple beds if we want to. We have a nicest sheets. They have to be organic cotton, this and that. Special lights, a little oil diffuser on the side. The best beautiful pajama that is like, half gold, half silver, whatever it is. Why would you not even need a pajama? When you go in and fall into deep sleep, you don't even know where you are, and it's quite wonderful. You see, you're doing all of that in order to forget everything. Because if you're thinking, okay, here's a beautiful pajama, me, I love my organic sheets, you would not be sleeping. You'll be still in your duality show, and that would not be right. Okay, so the bliss exists when there is a complete absence of thoughts. And for the last thing to say, since we love love, okay, if somebody was to tell you, I will love you only 10%, sorry, I cannot love you at the moment more because, I love money 80% and I love you 10% and I love something else 10%. In fact, I love 10% you and I love actually, I love our, let's say our dog or cat, I love 20%. So you happen to get a lesser percentage. So this is what happens. Sometimes people love their dogs and cats much more than their own partners. You don't tell anyone this, but this is the secret. What I'm trying to say is that nobody is happy being to be loved only 10%, 20%, or to love anything 10, 20%. Not just that, you want 100%. And you also want to experience a bliss to last, right? You don't want your bliss to be interrupted by anything. So what happens is that when you sip your coffee or hot chocolate, you want to maintain a continuous experience of bliss. The molecules have to hit in a certain way. Everything has to be done. Suppose you take some sip of chocolate, hot chocolate now, and then you say, after 15 minutes, I have some more. It's not the same. See, so you're looking for a permanent experience of something in this relative world. We're trying our best. Even the absolute existence in a relative sense is like this. You buy your shoes. Then you look, where did the shoes come from? Because you want to have an absolute existence in your shoes. You want your shoes to last for 15 years, not just for 3 months, right? So like this, everything you do, you're looking to experience yourself. Believe it or not. Every journey takes you through to ultimate cessation of thoughts. And only in that cessation of thoughts there is oneness. And this is why this path is so difficult, so strange, because it truly, seemingly is taking you on a long road here and there and everywhere in this whole samsara, the cycle of births and deaths, only to find yourself within yourself and nowhere else. So this is the end of my story for tonight. I will say Om 3 times. Om, 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 Purnamada, Purnamadam, Purnat, Purnamadachite, Purnasya, Purnamada, Purnameva, Shishyate, Shanti, 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 Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha, Harihi Om.